Hey, everybody, welcome back. Craig Shop here with our film critic extraordinaire, George Thomas, is here. It's been a couple of weeks. We've had some holidays and some just off schedules, but we are back. George, we're in the new year. We're getting close to the Oscar votes coming back and seeing who gets nominated. How have you been?
I've been good, surprisingly,
That's great to
thankfully.
hear. Yeah. Glad we have a new year and some good health from you. And we will have a couple of new reviews, one of which is a big time Oscar contender or hopeful anyway. But first, we're going to go with Unstoppable. This is a Amazon Prime. I guess you would call it in the same vein as some of the other sports related feel good stories that we've seen over time. I know there was a Kurt Warner biopic or whatever you want to call it a few years ago. Rudy, of course, is probably one of the more popular ones. But here we have maybe sort of a lesser known story from the mainstream perspective, but Unstoppable tells the story of Anthony Robles, a wrestler at Arizona State who competed with one leg and found some glory on the amateur wrestling mat. George, is this one of those types of sports movies that falls into those bad tropes that some other sports movies tend to, or does this rise above some of that feel good stuff that we are used to seeing in those movies?
It's interesting. I was having this conversation with the head coach of the Ohio State wrestling team
Mm-hmm.
because one of his former wrestlers who went to Walsh Jesuit near Akron plays Anthony Robles' adversary on the mat here in this
Okay.
film. And I put it to him this way because he asked if the movie was good. And I'm like, it's a crowd pleaser.
Yeah.
That's the best way to put it because, when a movie like this one does pays homage to Rocky, and
Mm.
it does by going to the Philadelphia Museum of Art, Anthony Robles setting his feet in Sly Stallone's shoe prints there. I
Mm-hmm.
guess they're there. I've never been. I've been to Philadelphia, but never the Philadelphia Museum of Art.
Okay.
But it it's if you're asking about tropes, it's the Rocky trope. You know what?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can be any more of an underdog if you're trying to wrestle without a leg.
Right.
Because let's be honest, wrestling is a sport that involves a lot of leverage.
Yeah.
And, you know, for I'm not going to say for worse, but, it's well done. It's a crowd pleaser, but know that it's very Rocky esque going in. And that's a story we've seen a million times over.
Yeah.
So I can't really say anything bad about it,
Yeah.
except for that. It's got nice performances.
Yeah.
Uh, J-Lo is in it.
Yeah.
Jarrell, oh God, I should know the guy. Jarrell Jerome plays
Yeah.
Anthony Robles.
Yeah.
Gives a great performance. Bobby Cannavale plays his stepfather.
Yeah.
And if there's one cliche, surefire cliche in there, it's the evil stepdad or evil stepmom, but he's the
Yeah.
evil stepdad. Um, it does a great job of living in that moment of Anthony Robles' life where he's trying very hard to get people to see him. He became a national champion at Arizona State.
Yeah.
And he had one college scholarship offer after winning state championships. And he passed on it to walk on at Arizona State. Not because he wanted to, but because the bigger schools, including Iowa, which is where he wanted to go, did not recruit him.
Right.
And it's a case of the filmmakers dealing with his mission to prove everyone wrong. Let everyone know that they made a mistake. And it's curious when talking to that coach today from Ohio State, his name is Tom Ryan. He said, I made a mistake by not recruiting.
Yeah.
Hindsight is 2020, but
Right. Yeah.
In that regard, it does its job. It's thoroughly enjoyable. It's got some touching moments. And other than that stepfather thing, I can't really say anything. It's 2 hours and 3 minutes. It doesn't feel like 2 hours and 3 minutes. And I watched it yesterday. I was going to stop to watch the news because I started around 4 o'clock. I didn't stop to watch the news.
Yeah.
I sat through it all.
Well, and you mentioned J-Lo and Bobby Cannavale, Don Cheadle, Michael Pena, a pretty good cast here.
That's a great cast, yeah.
You know, that's worth the price of admission right there. Obviously, if you have Amazon Prime, you'll be able to watch this. But yeah, I mean, sometimes I think a good cast can sort of elevate some of that tropey material, and here it seems like it probably does. And you know, if you're gonna borrow from an inspirational sports movie, you could probably do way worse than Rocky. So why not?
Oh, absolutely. And you know, I'm sorry, I forgot Don Cheadle and Michael Pena. It's like they give incredibly grounded, earthy performances, and there's nothing to dislike there either. It's a solid film. It's not a great film.
Right.
It's crowd pleaser, and I'm pretty sure they were going to release it in theaters at one point, a la what was the Nike movie?
Air.
Yeah, because Ben Affleck and Matt Damon produced this one as well.
Okay.
So I don't know what happened there, but it's going to be on Amazon Prime the 16th.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we always talk about January being sort of the doldrums of cinema, so maybe this will be something that people can check out and they can check it out at home. Obviously, we're sort of in the bad part of the movie year with January, but we're also sort of in that good part where we get some expanded releases from the Oscar season. I know Nickel Boys was a highly sought after watch for a lot of Academy voters. Ramel Morris's intriguing take, from what I've been told, that this is not a typical adaptation type film that he brings here with Nickel Boys. Tell us about the movie and if it lives up to some of the big Oscar hype that it has received.
You know, I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the film. Okay, but and I was talking to my older son about this. I let him know that I watched it, and he said something that I actually agreed with which never happens, and that's like the artistic vision got in the way to a certain degree. I mean, this is a story where you probably didn't need artistic flourishes. You let the material completely, utterly, and totally speak for itself. And it tells the story of two friends in a Florida reform school in the mid-'60s during the time of the civil rights movement. And it delves deeply into how they were treated. Even in reform school, there was segregation. And although let's call them what they were inmates. That's how they were treated. They were treated like grown-ass men, for lack of a better term. They were still less than human in the eyes of their captors. And, you know, being black in the panhandle of Florida in the 60s was a crime unto itself. And that's where Elwood, one of the characters, that's how he ends up in this reform school. Uh-oh.
Sorry about that, George. I had a little overheating issue there with the computer, but I do believe I'm back online. Obviously, this is a movie that has generated a lot of Oscar buzz, although it seems to be missing out on a lot of the precursor awards. Obviously, it does have sort of this artistic flourish and maybe sort of in some ways maybe perceived gimmick of how it's the story is told.
You're breaking up again.
But do you feel like this is a movie that's gonna at some point footing here with some of these precursor awards?
I don't think so. And see, I should have looked at, and I haven't yet, and the CCA nominations. For some odd reason, they flew under my radar. And I'm not even sure it was nominated there. Hold on a second. Yeah, it was. It was nominated. I don't know, man. It didn't stylistically. It didn't do a lot for me. Thematically, it did. The two leads are fantastic. Obviously, with it getting a CCA nomination, the organization I belong to, our awards tend to be more predictive than any others.
Yeah.
So, can it make that top 10? Sure.
Well, and it's kind of a weird year too, with coming off the writers and actors strike last year. I think there's a lot of there's not a lot of favorites out there right now. There obviously were some that came out of the festival circuit with like Anora, The Brutalist. Obviously, Wicked has made a bunch of money and wasn't a complete mess. So people, have penciled that into several nominations. But, this is one of those movies that, I think the Academy tends to award, even though it may not get the Golden Globe type love and BAFTA, things like that.
Who wants Golden Globes type love?
Any love, I guess. The Golden Globes, obviously Nickel Boys did not do a lot of international press touring, to say the least. But I know what you mean. Obviously the Academy does things a little bit differently, but it does seem though like this is a movie that obviously this is one of those classic limited releases and then maybe expanding week after week kind of deals, but you really haven't seen a lot of publicity for it. They haven't really been pushing this, and I get why. You don't want to spend a lot of money when you're not going to make a ton of money at the box office, but
Correct.
It just feels like they're not really getting it out there as much, and maybe they're getting it more to the things that matter as well, at least as far as the Academy goes, like getting out screeners and making sure the Academy gets to see this. But it just seems like it kind of came out with a whimper, and it just hasn't really gained any steam like other movies have, like word of mouth for The Substance or Anora or The Brutalist that's, going to be expanding here in the next couple of weeks.
I was going to ask you to name what's been getting buzz. So you popped off 3. Kudos to you. But, the screeners have gone out. I have one.
Yeah.
I have two actually. One, I have a link and I have a physical disc. I just think it's flown under the radar, and I think anyone who's promoting a movie, and the smaller studios do what they can, but you're going to see a full on press for something like Wicked. You really are. Um, what else? Um,
Well, Conclave has seemed to get a little bit more than just the normal Academy love. I mean, I think it's been pretty popular, and now it's on streaming, so even
here,
more people get a chance to see it.
here's the thing. As I look at the Best Picture list nominee for the Critics' Choice Association, there are 7 smaller films this year. There are 2 what I count as major studio releases, and that's Wicked and Dune Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
A complete unknown falls in that middle ground.
Yeah.
So if anything, this harkens back to that. Remember that period in the late '90s when it was small film dominated awards wise?
Yeah.
That's what this year feels like.
Yeah, and it feels like The Brutalist is probably the most. I called it Oscar-y with some of my friends. It's got that Oscar baity feel without being like Oscar baity. It's kind of the 3.5-hour post World War II immigration epic that seems like it's gotten the love that it's needed from some of the precursors, and it's gaining more steam. And I think too, it's been helped by the fact that it was a late December release. It's coming off of the Golden Globe buzz. Now you're going to get expanded release in the next couple of weeks, so audience will get a chance to see it if they want to see the 3.5-hour movie. But I think other movies like Anora have lost a little steam. Even Wicked, to a degree, probably has lost a little bit of steam as far as like the big buzz, because John Chu missed out on a lot of directors opportunities, and it looks like he's going to get shut out. And you think that, can Wicked win Best Picture if it doesn't get a Best Director nomination, even though it's probable that it's going to get 2 acting nominations? It's kind of, it really is up in the air right now with how this Academy season could go.
Oh, I completely agree. That's going to ultimately make the Oscars fun.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's going to be able to pick them correctly.
Right.
But I also wonder how many people will have seen all the movies on this list.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I was fortunate enough to see Anora. It had a very, very small theatrical run here in Middle Tennessee. I was very fortunate to see that. But, other movies like Nickel Boys, I will say Nickel Boys is playing at one of our independent theaters, so that's a benefit. But, Sing Sing came out in late July, early August, and a lot of people position that as a big favorite early on in the season, and then all of a sudden it didn't really make any money at the box office, and people stopped talking about it, and you wonder if it was just a weird release time to put that out in the right in the middle of blockbuster season, where you're going up against movies that are just going to be more entertaining to the mass audiences.
I could agree with you, but I don't think it was a particularly blockbustery summer.
No, it wasn't, but it's been a weird year in general. But, you're talking about a Oscar baity type of movie with a Coleman Domingo performance that was really lauded from the beginning. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, we're just going to put it out in the middle of, in the late summer and hope that people like it. And then we'll maybe make a little box office on it and it'll carry itself into Oscar season. But if you look at it this way, Dune came out almost a year ago, close to 10 months ago. And although it's going to probably fit into the top 10 for Best Picture, Denis Villeneuve is not going to be nominated for Best Director. And he was nominated for Part 1, which Part 2 is a superior movie. So it just goes to show you that you can lose some steam in this season very quickly, and especially when your movie came out 10 months ago, because in a year where it seemed like it was going to be light on Oscar type movies, I thought Villeneuve was going to be a shoo-in for Best Director, and now he looks like he's on the outs as well.
You know, there are only 5. With the CCA, we nominated 7, and I'm looking at the list, and I see him and Chu on the outside looking in.
Yeah. That's
correct. I'm incorrect. There are 8.
Chu is in, and yeah, they're both in. Yeah.
I see them on the outside looking in for the Oscars. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, do you think that given, and I know we've done the 10 movie thing for a while now, and I know they've had the 5 to 10 movie thing for a while and all that kind of stuff. Do you feel like they should expand the categories a little bit if they're going to allow for 10 best pictures? Because it makes it very odd for 5 directors and then you have 10 best pictures, and thinking, are 5 of those best pictures pretty much guaranteed to not win best picture? Because if you're not in best director, it is very rare that you don't win, or that you would win best picture. Do you feel like they should expand that, or would it, you know, water down the territory a little bit there if they did?
I think they think that it would, for the acting categories and directing categories, that it would make the award less prestigious. Think about it. If they nominate up to 10 pictures, every critic in the country does a top 10.
Yep.
And that makes sense to them.
Yeah.
They did it, and it didn't seem to bother a lot of people. Now, what's going to happen this year when Wicked doesn't win Best Picture, and it won't? A lot of people are going to scream bloody murder, because that's what...
But aren't those the people that normally don't get that? You know what I mean? Like, they don't get the ceremony. They're more of this was a good high grossing movie, it should win Best Picture. You know, exactly. Aren't those people that are going to get mad?
Exactly.
The Academy doesn't care.
Obviously. I mean, I recall being upset in 1977 for the 77 Oscars in 78 that Star Wars got shut out. I was pissed.
Yeah.
I was also 13. So
I'm sure the Academy took it under advisement.
Well, they did eventually by expanding to 10 films.
They didn't do that until The Dark Knight got squeezed out and everybody really threw a fit.
Well, The Dark Knight deserved to be in the top 5.
It did, but at the same time, you know, but then everybody's like, well, it should have won. And, you know, how could Slumdog Millionaire have won? And it's like, I think a lot of people that were saying that were people that, and I'm not trying to sound film snobbish or anything like that, but really didn't have a deeper palette of movie watching. Like, they watched blockbusters and, you know, spring and holiday releases, but they didn't really watch movies like Slumdog Millionaire or independent movies that were a little bit more artsy and esoteric, but still very, you know, exhilarating in their own way.
They never have. I mean,
yeah.
That's why independent films and smaller films are what they are.
Yeah.
They're for those movies are for film fans.
Yeah.
Bottom line, film fans. And that's why I was able to that's why I didn't turn Nickel Boys off. I give it credit for being a film and not a movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The story affected me. So, hey, boom, it's a film. It was shot well. I got the artistic vision. I didn't appreciate it in this instance. And that's not 90, we'll give the benefit. That's not 80% of the movie-going public. I mean, Hollywood has been bragging the past couple weeks that the box office is back, baby. The box office is back. And they see a light at the end of the tunnel. And my theory is with something like that, there's going to be more schlock as opposed to these smaller, thoughtful films. And mind you, I'm going to get to what's on the list. I'm just not voting in our awards this year.
Yeah.
I won't be watching these movies all within a day anyhow, because those ballots are...
Yeah. I know we've talked about this, but they just don't make those like mid-level budget movies anymore that end up like a 50 to 75 million dollar budget, which obviously 25 years ago would have been big, a big budget movie, but they don't make those like mid-budget movies that are box office gold. And I think that's why studios are so stressed out, where they feel like they have to make franchise after franchise, because the minute they don't, they make a movie that, oh well, we'll try this out, and then it's terrible, or someone, no one goes to see it, and then they're out like $200 million because, and I know you enjoyed Red One, but Red One's one of those examples of a movie that no one went to see in theaters. Now I'm sure it'll have legs on Amazon Prime, and it'll be a holiday movie that people watch, but tangibly though, you can say like, well, people are watching it on Prime, but are they subscribing to Prime so they can watch it? I think that's the biggest distinction between people watching on streaming. Like I'm not going to buy a subscription to Peacock so I can watch Conclave. However, if I have Peacock, I will watch Conclave. So the idea is that, yeah, people are watching these movies, but they're not really paying for them, so to speak. They're not really getting that big box office-y type jump that they would tangibly be able to see in the receipts, saying that you went to see this movie and you paid money to see that specific movie.
It's interesting because recently I started just going back in time through my junket years and the junkets I did when I at the News Herald in Lake County, for instance. There was a movie with Paul Newman, Gene Hackman, and Susan Sarandon in the cast. It's called Twilight. I think it was directed by Sidney Lumet, but don't quote me. And hands down, it's better than a lot of stuff we see today in that mid-movie range. But you know what? Today it would not get made.
Yeah.
Period. Even with a cast like that. Of course, some people out there may be asking the question, who's Paul Newman? Or who's Gene Hackman?
Yeah, that's possible.
Or who's Susan Sarandon? That's where I say Google is your friend, but they are three of the best actors of their generation, especially Newman and Hackman, man.
Yeah.
They didn't play. But films like that just don't. And I'm shocked that the subject matter of Conclave made it to the screen. I really am.
Yeah. And that's a good point. I mean, especially it's rated PG as well. So it's not like it's some, thriller. I mean, it's a thriller, but not in the, Da Vinci Code sense type of deal where you're really dramatizing things and, things like that. So you're right. I mean, it's really hard to find that middle ground with movies. And, unfortunately, the middle ground now seems to be about $100 million, the way movies are being made these days with bloated budgets and, things like that, where you're looking at a movie and you're like, oh, well, Gladiator 2 did well at the theaters, but then maybe it barely made its money back, based off of, what they're spending on production and what they're spending on, advertising and things like that. And it's like, man, they have to make so much money these days just to break even on a lot of these films. And it's almost like you're kind of fighting a losing battle before you even go into it. In a lot of ways, I think.
And thus we have studios now releasing maybe 10 films a year.
Yeah.
Major releases. And more than half of them are generally blockbustery schlock.
Yeah. Well, as always, good conversation. Is there anything that you've caught up on over the holidays, or what did you watch over the holiday season? I can tell you that we watched a lot of Christmas movies and a lot of terrible, terrible, terrible movies that I have since forgotten what they were called, but they were so bad that it made me want to like claw my eyes out with spoons because it was just bad.
Yeah, well, I watched a couple of movies that were Christmas movies that fell into that category. My family, we were looking to watch a movie Christmas Eve.
Mm-hmm.
My sons had never been introduced to the wonder that was Bad Santa.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
and that one has a place in my heart because the Catholic League came at me for my positive review on that one.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah. I wear that as a badge of honor.
You're such a rebel, George.
So we watched Bad Santa and Bad Santa 2, and you know what?
Okay.
It kind of holds up. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm one of those who thinks there's no such thing as bad Billy Bob.
Good point. Very good point. Yeah.
And he is positively cynically masterful in those films.
He is perfectly cast in Bad Santa. Billy Bob Thornton is perfectly cast in Bad Santa.
And other than that, yeah, I was too busy hosting Christmas Day for my family
Okay.
and recovering. So
Absolutely. All right. Well, I know there's like you've said in the past here, there's plenty of things that you'd like to catch up on. Have you caught up on anything that maybe you missed during your absence, or anything on the horizon that you might catch up on?
I'm gonna check out The Brutalist probably over a couple of days. I've got a screener for that. I am gonna catch up on Conclave.
Okay.
Um, my sons watched Denora.
Okay. What'd they think?
One son was 20 at the time, and all he could say was, "Wow, there's a lot of sex in that movie."
Yeah.
And
It definitely doesn't pull any punches. Yeah.
and the other, the would be film critic, loved it. The 20-year old.
I think it's great. I really think that it is one of the best American movies of the last 5 years. It is a terrific movie. Sean Baker has always been sort of that like new generation Paul Thomas Anderson, where he makes like these really strong indie films that now he's finally starting to break through into the popular mass audiences. And Mikey Madison, I fear that she may not win Best Actress at this point because Demi Moore seems to be steamrolling now with the narrative of her age and being, wanting to quit Hollywood and all that kind of stuff. I think she's going to, generate a lot of sympathy. But, Mikey Madison's performance is just ferocious. It's vulnerable. There are some genuinely funny, hysterical moments when you would least expect them. And I think it's a great film. I really do. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful film. My wife almost liked it. That's how good it is. And it's not her cup of tea. So
Okay.
yeah, I would see it. I will say this though. I got into so I haven't gotten into the debate yet because I haven't seen him yet, but friend at work who loves movies as well. I won't name drop because I don't agree with his opinion on this one, but we got into a heated debate over text messages that he was not a fan of Anora and did not like the Mikey Madison performance. So once I see him at the office, we will have to exchange some verbal barbs, I think, because it is a movie that I will go to the top of the hill and defend because I think it's a great American film.
Everybody's got a few of those types of films in their inner data bank, so don't worry about it.
Yeah.
No judgment here.
All right. Well, as always, what do you have coming up next week? Anything coming up?
We talked about one that's opening here.
Yeah.
So, and we dealt with Unstoppable. But I'm curious, and Saturday night, it's Chinese popcorn and George Thomas's own personal pleasure, which is Star Trek Section 31,
Okay.
the Paramount Plus, straight to Paramount Plus streaming movie,
Okay. Wow.
where Michelle Yeoh's character is brought back to lead a department of Starfleet that operates clandestinely.
Okay.
So that's it so far.
Okay. Do you ever get confused about what's coming out with Star Trek? I mean, I am not a Trekkie by any means, but it just seems so confusing with how much stuff they have that and I that they can throw out there and just randomly throw out there. Do you ever get like lost in all of it?
Yeah, I did recently because, oddly enough, one of the best Star Trek shows done has been the animated comedy Star Trek Lower Decks.
Yeah, I know you've liked that. Yeah.
And the final season started streaming back in October. And I didn't pick it up until the end of November, which is unlike me because normally I'm there for every episodic release. And it's like, oops. And see, it probably comes from me not really checking my email. I mean, because that's a screener I get. So that one.
Okay. Well, as always, George, appreciate your time. We will talk more again soon. You take care of yourself and send your regards to the family. And hopefully you get a chance to watch some good movies here in the next couple of weeks.
I plan on it because football season is almost over.
Well, you've got a big one tomorrow night, though, so I know that your fellow Buckeye faithful will be glued to the TV sets.
But I won't.
You won't? Are you going to Playhouse Square?
There we go.
I've got tickets. Yeah.
I've got. What is it we have? The Life of Pi on stage.
Oh! I bet that would be fun.
So we'll see, but that's tomorrow night's play. Dinner and a show.
Is that based off of the Ang Lee movie, or is it like a previous? Is it like an original take on it?
I think it's based on the Ang Lee movie.
Oh, I love the Ang Lee movie. That was a great movie. Beautiful. So, one of the most beautiful looking movies ever made. It was gorgeous.
From what I understand, it's with the use of puppetry. It's very Lion King-esque. I don't know if you've ever seen the Lion King musical.
I have not, no.
It's very much like that stylistically or technically, whatever you want to call it. So I'll let you know.
Exciting. Well, I can't wait to hear about it. That's a pretty unique it seems very very like it doesn't seem very wide appeal because the movie was it's 13 years old now this year, but I'm glad that they have made it and made it to Playhouse Square. That's sounds very interesting. So
the entire series this year doesn't have much of a wide appeal. The best known production was probably Some Like It Hot.
Oh, wow.
Because it's absolutely fantastic.
Was it?
Yeah, because they modernized it thematically.
Okay.
So really enjoyed that one. I'm going to let you go, but that's where I'm going to be tomorrow night unless of course the game gets postponed, which they're talking about in Dallas, and which I'm kind of hoping for. So we shall see.
Yeah. All right. Well, enjoy your time at the Square, and we will talk again soon. Have a good one.
Take it easy.